Have you ever thought of starting your own business? Making your life your own? Now's the time. To get started. Welcome back to Starting a Business Simplified. I'm your host, Suzy Wraines. And in this episode, I want to talk about all the tools and resources that you will be using as a small business owner. When you get started, these tools are going to be a smaller list. And I always say, use only the things that you need to service your clients in the beginning. So in the beginning, only have those particular tools that are required to either get new clients, generate leads, and or be able to service your clients. So it's important that you have what you need to be generating income to start off with. As your business grows, you will shift in what tools that you're required for servicing clients, getting leads, signing up new clients, marketing, all of those things, depending on what you're doing. So for example, I do a podcast. So I have different tools required for hosting my podcast, editing my podcast, marketing my podcast. And that's different than maybe tools that I use for taking care of my clients, coaching my clients, and having what they need to get their services. So that's what this episode is going to be about. I'm going to share my list of tools that I use in my business for all the things that I do in order to have a successfully running business. So I made a list, and as I was writing it down, I realized how much I really have invested in tools. Now, this isn't necessarily money, it's time. And each tool has a purpose. There's an intention behind it. Some of them I pay for, some of them are free. So I'm going to give you an idea of what these tools are and how I use them. In a future episode, I actually have the founder and CEO of Attractwell, which is the tool that I use. And I wrote it down because there's a lot that it does. It does my website, my Zoom account, my email, campaigns, sales, coaching, membership, blog, forms, and CRM. It's all in one. And this particular tool is what I call my business back office because it allows me to create landing pages, my website. I can just do courses. So for those of you that follow me and know, I have workshops that I offer. So you can actually go to my website and you can see what workshops are there. And I put all of the information about my workshops through Attractwell on there. When you join a workshop, you fill out a form that's on Attractwell. And it just asks for your email and your name, and you sign up for the workshop. The paid workshops, then I collect the payment on my website through Attractwell. The other tool that I use linked with Attractwell is Stripe. Stripe is a payment processor. So for those of you that don't know, in order to take credit cards or debit cards or anything like that online, electronic payment, it goes through a payment processor. And that payment processor that I use is Stripe. There's Square, there's other ones, PayPal, all of those ones that you've probably made purchases through, but you didn't realize you were doing it because it is a third party, what's called a third party vendor, and it's separate. So I link my Attractwell pages to Stripe. Therefore, when you click on the website, you can fill in your payment information and it is processed through Stripe. There is a fee associated every time there's a transaction, and I don't pay up front to have a Stripe account. I pay whenever people purchase something, they take a percentage as payment for Stripe. So that's how that works. That's one of them. I'm looking at my list for those of you that are watching the video podcast on Spotify or on YouTube. If I look down, it's because I took notes because I wanted to make sure I captured as many of the tools as I could think of that I'm using. So Attractwell is my all-in-one. It is the first tab that I open every single day. And that's where I communicate with people. So I have emails in there. I have all my contacts in there. I have future people that want to work with me. I have current clients in there. I have leads. I have all the people that sign up for my workshops. and the list goes on and on. It's a great platform to simplify having everything in one place. So, for example, if you sign up for one of my workshops, you then get an email that says, "Welcome to the workshop. Here's the details about the workshop. Here's a reminder for the workshop." It does all of that automatically. I don't have to do anything. So, it's a great tool. If you're curious about the tool, I am going to put links in the show notes of all of these tools that I use. You can click on the links and research them and see what if there's something that stands out or that you need to work with for your business. Attractwell, I am an affiliate for, so I am going to disclose that I do get a commission for anyone that signs up for Attractwell. It's not huge, but it is something. So I like to encourage people, if you have links that go to affiliates, use those. That's another form of income. So it's another way that you can expand your business without doing a lot of work. You just share with people what you're doing and how much you love it, and then they click on the link and you get paid. And that's how affiliate links work. So I've been using Attractwell for over 2 years. Like I said, there's going to be an episode coming up after this one, shortly after this one, talking to Greg, who founded it. And he's going to share his small business journey and how he got started with this Attractwell tool as a business owner. So let's keep going into the list. The list is kind of long. All right. Google Workspace. I worked in corporate. I have a history working in corporate, and I worked with the Microsoft suites. I understand there's all kinds of stuff in there. Then I left corporate, went into the Army, and didn't really do a whole lot with computers. Worked in the healthcare system, worked in hospitals, didn't really do a lot with the Microsoft suite. Came out of that and ended up working in veterinary medicine and did have experience with Google Workspace. Some of the veterinary clinics that I worked in hospitals actually used Google Workspace as their main hub for all of their employees. So we did a lot with using Google Workspace there. That's where I was introduced to it. And that is the tool that I use now. 2 reasons that I use it. It's less expensive for a business owner. It's like less than $7 for me to have a Google Workspace account, and I can always upgrade, add users to it. It'll cost per user. For me, it's just me right now because I'm by myself. So it's less than $7 and I get the entire suite. So I'm actually going to look at it so that I can tell you while I am on here. Let me just go in to, all right. So I'm looking at my screen. So I apologize for those of you watching video. I'm actually looking away, but it has Gmail. It has my Drive, which is my main actual place that I save all my documents. So for example, I put in my client files in there. So the clients I'm working with, I put their stuff in there. I have all of my business set up. So for those of you that have followed the podcast, there's actually an episode where I talk about organization. And this is where I put my folders. So I have an accounting folder, a marketing folder, a business strategy folder, my own personal coaching folder for me, my coaching that I go and hire people to do coaching with me. Not with me as clients, but me being their client. As coaches, it's hard to describe that. I hire coaches to coach me. That's easier. So I have a folder for that so that I can house all the stuff that I'm doing with other coaches. I have a folder that is a shared folder for documents that I'm sharing with my clients. So I have spreadsheets that I've created, other documents that they're using, Google Docs that they're using to fill in worksheets and things like that. And those all go into the Drive. There's a Google Docs, which is similar to Microsoft Word. There is a Google Sheets, similar to Excel. There is a Google Slides, similar to PowerPoint. These are all like parallel stuff in the Microsoft universe. My calendar's in there. They have Google Meet, which I don't use. I use Zoom, but Google Meet is like Zoom. It's a meeting place. So for those of you that don't want to have a separate Zoom account, if you're just getting started, this Google Workspace is a beautiful place to start because you get a calendar, you get Google Meet, you get your contacts, you get everything that you need to have your back office, all of your documents and everything in one place. And Google Meet is actually in the calendar, so you can schedule video calls with people. It's all in the same charge. So that under $7 a month for one person, for me, I can do everything with that. So it's a great time and money saving tool if you're just getting started and you want to just use that. You can actually set up a basic website. I'm going to say basic, very basic, through Google Sites. So if you have a Google Workspace account, you can set up a basic website through Google to do that. So I'm going to come back to my video. That was just kind of me reading off the screen of what Google Workspace has, but I always recommend it to my clients to get started, to have a one place to house everything. It is online so that you have a cloud backup. I always recommend downloading your workspace folder to an external drive if you want to have an external copy. I do that like once a quarter, definitely at the end of the year, so that I have everything that I've ever done in my business in a copy that I keep for myself. Can always sign in. The beautiful thing about Google Workspace is that you can sign in from anywhere. So for example, I'm going to visit family and I need to use one of their computers. I can get on their computer and I can log into Google with my Workspace account and I see everything. It's all right there. My calendar's there, my documents are there, and they have nothing to do with it. Their computer, I'm signed in as a guest, boom, my business is right there. When I got a new computer, I upgraded my computer. I have my laptop and now I have a desktop. I just signed into Google Workspace on my new computer. Boom, everything's still there. So it is a beautiful tool to have where everything is in one place and it's easy to use. So I use that. Descript is a podcast video editing software, or I say software, I'm 51. Those of you who are older understand the word software. We don't really use it anymore. It's apps or platforms or whatever we want to call them. Descript is a platform that you can download, and it also has an online version. This is what I use to edit my podcast, and it does video and audio editing. That's what I'm using to create videos. If you see videos coming out or on the YouTube channel and you see things with video and music and all that stuff, that is Descript. That's what I'm using for that. And I do pay for that one. Asana, for those of you that don't know, for those of you that use Trello, Asana's comparable, similar type tool. If you use Mondays, similar type tool. It's a project management, task management tool. I don't pay for my version because it's just me and my husband using it. And so we don't need to pay because we don't need all the fancy bells and whistles. I use it to schedule my podcast. So it gives me a list of projects. One of my projects is podcast schedule. And I go in there and I can list out all the podcast episodes that I'm working on, who my guests are, any details about it, so that my husband can see it also. So we can track. I record the podcast and then he takes it from there and does a lot of the editing and making it all fun and pretty. And then he schedules it out through Spotify for podcasters. So all that being said, we share our Asana account so that we can see where each other is in that process. And that's just step one. There's a whole bunch that goes into podcast. If you want to hear all the steps that I go into a podcast episode, I share that in the Starting a Business Simplified podcast listeners community on Facebook. I have a separate private group where I go in there and I talk about behind the scenes of how things are created, what I'm doing in my business, what's happening on the podcast. And I have a live that I did, I think last week or recently, where I talk through what happens with an episode for a podcast. What are all the steps that go into getting a podcast episode recorded, edited, and then marketed? So if you want to hear that, click on the link in the show notes, join the Starting a Business Simplified podcast listeners community on Facebook. I would love to have you in there. All right, moving on. Cast Magic. We're staying in the podcast area. Cast Magic is a tool that I started using last year, a couple months into having my podcast. I found them to be absolutely amazing. It is an AI tool, meaning when I record an episode, I upload it to Cast Magic and it actually goes through the entire episode and it reads the transcript. It creates a transcript from the audio and video and then uses the transcript to generate content. So it generates show notes. It gives me ideas for titles. It gives me posting options. So it'll give me ideas for LinkedIn posts, for Facebook posts, for YouTube comments, descriptions. It gives me, if I want it to, I can ask it to write me a blog post. If you see on my website and you go and you look at the blog that I have there that has each episode, so I always upload a copy of the episode from the podcast, and then I write a blog about it. That blog is generated in Cast Magic. Saves a ton of time. I read every single one that I do, and I make sure and edit it. So I don't just copy and paste. It is not upload, copy, paste. It is upload, read, make sure it makes sense, and it's how I want it to sound, and edit it, and then post it as a blog post or as a social media post or whatever the case may be. So that tool has been invaluable. It is so helpful to have that for me when I'm creating content from my podcast episodes. Any audio or video file I can upload. It doesn't have to be a podcast episode. If there's something, if I do an interview with somebody, so in the Facebook community, the Starting a Business Simplified podcast listener community, I go live in there. And a lot of times I bring guests in and we do a live. And I will record that sometimes and then take snippets from that and upload it to Cast Magic and say, hey, can you give me some posts around this? So then it makes it easier for me to go out and do posting to be able to promote that live interview that I did with somebody. So these are tips and tools, how you can use the tools that you have to make things easier for you. That's one of mine. Bitly. I know there's more of this type of tool out in the universe. This just happens to be the one that I use for free. Bitly is a way to shorten the URL address for anything. And it has a lot of other options of ways you can use Bitly, but I don't use it for that. I specifically just use it to shorten the web links. And for those of you who know, the URL web link, same thing. So when I have a link to a podcast episode or to a website, web page, or an article or something that I want to share, I will go into Bitly and create a shortened link. The shortened link is easier for social media to share it. So a lot of times, sometimes if you copy a link and then you paste it like into a post or into a message or something like that, and you get this big, huge, long link that's like 4 pages long, and you're like, wow, what happened there? Because that's what it needs to point to, the website or whatever it is that you're sharing. Bitly will shorten that and make it extremely short and easy to share. So I use that tool a lot, and I use it mostly for my podcast episodes if I'm sending people directly to an episode. So for example, if I go into Spotify and I go share, give me the link to share the episode, it's a pretty long link. It's going to give the whole thing of my podcast address, then the actual episode, and it's pretty long. So I use that to shorten it, make it a short link, easy to click on and share and all of that. So I use Bitly for that. Again, I use the free version. I don't use all the bells and whistles that come with it. It has a lot more stuff in there. You can generate QR codes and a whole bunch of other things. I just don't use it for that. Worth checking into though. The next one is Calendly. Now there are multiple types of calendar programs out there. You can use your Google Calendar. There's ways to create a link and have scheduling through Google. I don't use that. I use Calendly because of the functions that I need it for, specifically to my business, and I actually pay for an upgrade to use those functions. So there's a free version that's limited. You can use that when you're first starting out if you want to share the link, or use your Google Calendar. It's part of your Google Workspace, and you can set up meetings that way too. There's a lot of different tools you can use for calendars. I just happen to use this one, and I use it because of what it is that it offers, how I can use it for my business. So I want to emphasize to you, all these tools that I'm using, you're not just going to sit down and go, I'm going to use all the same tools that Suzy uses. Then I can create my business. Everything is custom, and it has a strategy behind it. So remember, when you're thinking about getting a tool, getting a resource, something that you're going to use for your business, think about what the intention is for that tool. What are you using it for? How is it going to help you get clients or service clients? That's the goal. So again, it's not just copying the tools I have, it's researching. Go out and research, what tools do you need? And this is something that I work with my clients on. This is something that In the Business Success Breakthrough Association, which is our community of small business owners that I coach, we all talk about these things and we share what we're doing and different tools that we have, resources to help bring awareness to maybe one that would work for you that somebody else is using, or maybe you're using one that somebody else didn't know about. And they're like, oh, that's a good idea. I could use that in XYZ way. And so it's just bringing awareness. And that's something that we do in the association. This is a group program that I have for a community of small business owners. They come together as they're creating their business and we work with each other. I do weekly coaching with them. So it's a great community to be a part of. If you're curious or interested about that, please click on the link in the show notes and schedule a call with me and I can go over what that's all about. All right, moving on. We talked about Stripe. That's on my list. Canva. Canva was the last one that I could think of off the top of my head. And that one is just image generating design type tool. So I'm going to give you an example. Again, these are examples from my podcast because that's where I use these tools mostly. I create a LinkedIn article when I do a podcast. And again, I use Cast Magic for that. It helps me write the article and the post content for when I post the article. The article itself, though, requires a image. It's a title image. And anytime I post an article on LinkedIn, it always asks me, you need to put an image with it. You have to, it's required. So I use Canva for that. I go into Canva and I have the size that LinkedIn recommends. That's the size image that I use. And then I can create the image for the article and I can just I do a template in Canva and then I can just go in and update it whenever I have an article that I need to post on LinkedIn. Canva is the sky's the limit. All the thumbnails that you see for my podcast, all of the images that you see that I'm posting on social media, for those of you that follow me, they're all generated in Canva. So if you aren't familiar with Canva, they have a free version as well. I use the paid version because I use a lot of their images, their actual photos that they have in there, and those are licensed. So if you aren't paying for the upgraded version, you can't use a lot of the photos that are included. So I pay for that because I want to have unlimited photos and just use everything that's in there. So it's up to you. The free version has a lot of options. You can do that until your business gets off the ground and you've got income coming in, then you can always upgrade. So Canva is another one that I'm going to be doing a workshop on, how to use it, the basics of navigating Canva. So that's coming up in the workshops. If you're curious about workshops, again, I have the link on my website, SuzyWraines.com. If you want to go there, it's right at the top. Check out the workshops that I have coming up. So that's it for my tools. I'm going to read them just from the list really quickly, just to give you a refresher. And then I'm going to share in the show notes all of these different tools so that you have them. So we have a Track12, which houses everything all in one for website, email campaign, contacts, Zoom, and blog, all of the things you can think of. Google Workspace, housing all my documents and all of the tools that I use for docs, sheets, slides, all of that stuff is in there, as well as the documents for my clients that I work with. Descript, podcast editing, Asana, project management, Cast Magic, podcast AI content creation, Bitly, shortening my web links, URLs, Calendly to schedule calendar for all of the things that I schedule, Stripe to do processing for payments, and Canva for images. Those are all the main ones that I use. I use all of those in different capacities to run Business Simplified LLC. So I hope this episode was helpful for you and got you thinking about what tools do you need. And as always, keep it simple.